Hey guys, Curtis here. Here's with just another episode of kind of Sit and Talk. Today I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about competitive gaming's kind of mindset of either entering a fighting game, entering a card game, entering in a real-time strategy game, or anything. And that's coming in to talk about two different things of kind of your mindset. A lot of times when you're going into kind of a battle plan, you need to have one of two different mindsets in mind. The first mindset is, are you asking a question? And so usually this translates into offensive play. I'm going to do something really tricky, really fast, really damaging. Do you know how to block it? Do you know how to avoid it? And with the new Hearthstone kind of expansion, do you have the cards to stop whatever strategy I'm doing? Or if you're playing a miniature war game like War Hordes type of thing, do you have the list to stop my kind of cheese list or something like that? All of these have the overall game plan of doing something that's very specialized, that's sometimes a little wonky and unique, that's just putting a question to your opponent. I'm coming at you hard and fast. Do you know how to stop it? If not, I'm going to win a game. And we see that in a lot of styled play in Tekken, in which we call like the high risk, high reward characters, like Lily, like Eddie, these kind of more awkward kind of characters that if you know how to block them, you block them and you punish them severely. If you don't though, they will just keep launching you and just constantly doing massive amounts of damage to you. Same thing with kind of Xiaoyu Link players, like they can poke in. Do you know how to deal with Art of Phoenix? If you don't, you will most likely lose that match. These are characters in different styles and situations in which they are asking you, do you know how to stop this? Which brings us to the second point of having an answer, in which this is more of a defensive mindset, this is more of a controlled mindset of you've seen what's out there, and so you are building either your attack plan in a fighting game, you're building your deck in a card game, you're building your miniature army with in mind of my army is able to stop or prevent XYZ actions, in which you're already going into a match having answers, knowing what to do. And that for Tekken, this is why we do this matchup analysis. This is why we look at frame data. This is why we do practice and training. Because if we don't see a character's move and it's the first time they've seen it, I've been in tournament settings of, hey, I really don't know what to do against this character. It doesn't matter how well I know my character. If they are asking me a question and I am playing defensively, they're most likely going to win because I won't know kind of the shenanigans or unique style that they have. This is why a lot of times when a new fighting game comes out with a new character or like a new expansion in a game, usually the tactics in which there's a new character or some new question that's being asked, a lot of experienced players struggle with very, very much. A big example is if we look at EVO 2017, that we did have Eliza players, we did have Akuma players. And while Akuma has been around in arcade tournaments, Eliza really wasn't around until console launch. And so these top players that really knew their characters, really knew what to do, they didn't know how to respond to Eliza, and Eliza kept asking questions in which these players were coming at strong, full force of, this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to be in your face, I'm going to do these hop kicks, what are you going to do to stop it? And a lot of times those Eliza players that ranked very, very high, while they're good players, I'm not trying to downplay that they don't know how to play, because they clearly do. But what they found in the meta, in the game style, whatever, is that they found a very important question that they can ask their opponents. And while a game matures, kind of more of these cheese tactics, you can call them cheese, kind of dwindle out of style. And if you're locked in a meta that never uses these kind of more wonky characters, like, for example, if you don't have an Eddie in your play group or you haven't played an Eddie in a long, long time, the chances are that when you finally face an Eddie who's really practiced, really seasoned, he's going to start asking you a lot of questions. Do you know how to respond to this? Do you not know how to respond to this? And this isn't just locked in with specific characters. Every character has something that they can ask the opponent. King we have multi-throws, we have command throws, and all these things of, do you know how to break throws? This is a big question that we are asking our opponent. We are asking them, do you know how to block, crouch dash 1, for instance? Do you know how to get around unblockable moves? And it comes to the point where you start doing more quote-unquote disrespect tactics, because if you do a high-risk move and they don't know how to punish it, you've asked them a question, do you know what to do in this situation? And a lot of times you start asking these more unobserved moves against weaker players to gauge how seasoned they are. And if they don't know how to respond to a certain move, or you observe that they keep doing a pure strategy to a specific setup, that's when you adapt, because all you're doing is you're asking questions. You're asking questions to your opponent. And as soon as they reveal, okay, well, this is my answer, internally we can say, that's not an appropriate answer, or like, oh, they really know what they're doing. And so in any style of game, 1 versus 1, or even team-based, what some of the psychology and kind of mentality going into it is, we are going to ask them a question. Or are we going to study our opponents, study what they can do, and find out what answers do we have? And that's how you're going to slowly start developing going into a match of not only what questions am I going to ask my opponent, but what are the potential questions they're going to ask me. And this takes a lot of kind of mental preparation at very high levels, very technical abilities that you're going to have to do, and not only for fighting games, not only for card games or miniature games, but also more professional sports like football, soccer, baseball, in which you're going to start doing techniques that, does your opponent know how to stop it? We've heard that your quarterback is a little weaker, a little slower, so we're going to put pressure on them to see how can we use this to our advantage, and we are asking them a question. And so this is a constant ebb and flow during a match. This is a constant ebb and flow during a meta, in which time is a relevant factor of information. And I'll repeat it, once a new game comes out, or once a new expansion or a new character or some new rule comes out, typically speaking, in general, if you find a very hard question to ask your opponent, do you know how to block a low? Do you know how to deal with dive kick? Do you know how to deal with teleport? These techniques and tactics are usually going to beat out even seasoned players, because early on, they're not going to have that answer. And while they may have a controlling mindset, they may just not know how to respond to it. And so I want you guys to kind of think a little bit about, when I'm just playing any game, so let's say I'm playing King, what are the questions that I hope to ask my opponent? I hope to get them in kind of a jab game. I hope to pressure them with different throws. I want to see how frequently they're ducking, in which then I'm going to kind of do more of my mid attacks to punish that. And then I'm also observing, well, what is my opponent trying to do? I can just openly say, a lot of times I don't like to block low unless it's a very slow low attack that I know is a high crush. And so I just kind of eat those no CM lows, which is a very Korean style to do, and I just accept that. But as soon as I observe that my opponent asks me the question, oh, can you block this low? And I get hit by it, and then a little bit later they're like, let me ask him again. I hit him with another low. I constantly observe, oh, they finally figured out that they can hit me with these lows. At that point, I almost stop doing all high attacks and I just start doing mid attacks, because during the first round or 2 rounds, they're figuring out what questions to ask me. What are you going to get hit by? What are you going to get blocked? Can I throw you? Are you breaking my throws? And what you're doing is you're slowly changing the behavior of the match. But you should have the long-term plan of, I'm going to accept getting hit in these areas, which are very low damaging to me, but as soon as I observe that he thinks he can keep asking that question, is when I'm going to start low pairing, is when I'm going to start throwing out these hop kicks, is when I'm going to start throwing out just down forward 2-1 critical hit type of things, and really punishing. Because I'd much rather eat 14 damage here and there if a future payout from basically training my opponent to asking a very bad question is I'm going to start punishing them by doing 50 to 85 damage of what they're doing. So I'd much rather eat 14 damage here and there, especially if I have a round lead, of show them, oh, you know, I'm really not blocking low, maybe you should do lows, maybe you should do lows. Like, oh, he finally figured out he should do lows against me. Then I start hitting him over and over and over again. And so this is the overall game plan of, I know a strong strategy of what to do, a lockdown strategy or an evasion strategy, whatever question that you have with your specific character or specific game. But over time, you want to be able to not only ask questions, but you need to also have those questions answered of what your opponent is going to do. And that's why we do this in-depth analysis in basically every game imaginable. So that's literally all I wanted to talk about, is when you're entering just an overall game plan of what questions are you going to ask your opponent, what are the possible questions your opponent can ask me, and how do I use that to my advantage. So that's all I wanted to discuss today. Hopefully you learned something. If you liked this kind of sit and talk episode, make sure to hit that subscribe button below, and we're going to see you guys next time.